Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I have a recap of the national championship game between the Georgia Bulldogs and the TCU Horned Frogs. It obviously did not live up to the expectations or the hype that it was given. Georgia, just a splattering performance out there in the Natty. They won by a final score of 65-7, which is the largest point differential in any bowl game since at least 1948, I believe. This game just wasn't close at any point. Yes, Georgia went up 10-0 and TCU went down and scored to make it 10-7, but TCU didn't slow Georgia down whatsoever. TCU had one big play, and it was simply because Georgia had a busted coverage. Two guys went and guarded one. But that was really the only time all game that we saw TCU have success on offense, and it was in part of Georgia struggling on defense. Or I get not struggling, I guess messing up or missing an assignment. So looking back on some stats of this game, Georgia 589 total yards to TCU's 188. That's just not ideal in any game, getting outgained by 400 total yards, and that reflects on the scoreboard. 58 points. First downs, TCU had 9 first downs, and here's a good stat for you. That's how many touchdowns Georgia scored in this game. Georgia had 9 touchdowns, TCU had 9 first downs. You heard that right. It's a glaring discrepancy in first downs because Georgia had 32 to TCU's 9. Crazy. Georgia 9 for 13 on third down, TCU 2 for 11. Rushing yards. I know TCU didn't have their starting running back. With that being said, DeMarcado did really good against Michigan. TCU only had 36 rushing yards. That's DeMarcado and Max Duggan together, only 36 yards against that Georgia front. And Georgia ran all over that 3-3-5 defense, 254 rushing yards. They had 335 through the air. Georgia really did anything they want. Todd Monken up in the booth. This is probably the easiest game he's ever called in his life. Everything he was calling was working. I'm sure there was a couple times throughout the game when he was like, I'm going to call this play just for 3 or 4 yards, set up a good third down. He called that play, and it probably went for 20 yards, first down. Next play, another 20-yard gain, and before you know it, they're inside the 10-yard line. He can call whatever he wants, and it was just going to work. That's the kind of game this was. Now, personally, I thought it'd be a lot closer than this. I thought Georgia could cover the initial spread. It was 13.5, and it started to get closer as the game kicked off. With that being said, I expected Georgia to win this game, but this was just crazy. 65-7 in a national championship game. Like I said, the largest point differential in a bowl game, and it came in the national championship. Absolutely crazy. And I want to address something. Alabama. I don't know if it was right after the game or during, but I saw a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of Alabama fans or just college football fans in general, say that Alabama should have been in the playoff. That way we could have had Ohio State or Alabama play Georgia. Well, the committee didn't keep Alabama out of the playoff. Alabama kept themselves out. Alabama should have won their games, and then they could have got in. We got to remember, TCU was undefeated heading into the conference championship weekend. They were undefeated. Michigan was undefeated. And Georgia was undefeated. Ohio State 1 loss. USC had 1 loss. USC lost. Ohio State didn't play. Therefore, Ohio State went in. Alabama didn't play either, but they had 2 losses. They lost to LSU. They lost to Tennessee. Hey, if they stopped LSU on the 2-point conversion, they would have been in the playoff. And with the Tennessee game, Will Reichard, he had an opportunity to win the game with a kick. Missed it wide right. Tennessee went down, made a field goal. They won the game. So Alabama, they kept themselves out of the playoff. The committee got the right 4 teams in here. Because don't forget, we had 2 amazing semifinal games. In my opinion, we watched the national championship in the Peach Bowl between Ohio State and Georgia. I think that was the national championship. I said that in the comments. I replied to someone in the comments on my recap video for that game. And it turns out I was right. TCU really had no shot in this game. With that being said, TCU, they deserve to be here. They earned this. Undefeated regular season, lost in overtime in the Big 12 championship, got in the playoff. They beat Michigan, undefeated Michigan. They beat them. They earned the spot, but they laid an egg when they got there. I don't know if the moment was too big. I want to say the moment was too big, but I will say from seeing Georgia walk out of the tunnel, walking out onto the field, running out of the tunnel, and now that I think about it, TCU, it just looked different. They weren't as hype. I don't know. I think they were intimidated by Georgia a little bit in this game. First couple of plays, Jalen Carter was just bulldozing the offensive line at TCU right into the backfield. And every time TCU handed the ball off or Max Duggan went out of the pocket, there was someone there. I think Georgia's speed intimidated them. Their speed and their size in the interior. Like I said, Jalen Carter, he played a really good game. The box score might not show that, but he was dominant up front all game long. Like I said, TCU only had 36 rushing yards. He was a huge part in that. Along with him, Georgia's defense, they played some young players in this game. Michael Williams, he's a true freshman. Barry Alexander, he had 2 sacks. He's a true freshman. So a lot of young guys, A lot of young guys playing. Yeah, Malachi Starks, he's a safety. He's a true freshman. He's played in every single game this year. He's had an excellent freshman season. And it's just scary because all these guys are coming back. Jamin Dumas-Johnson, he's coming back. He's only a sophomore. Their 2022 recruiting class, which was incredible, all those guys are coming back. You have guys like Xavier Sori who don't even see the field. He's probably coming back, and he didn't really play this year. I'm sure there's going to be guys entering the portal, but you just don't know yet. Georgia's 2023 recruiting class, they have 3 of the top 5 linebackers coming in. So I imagine some guys will leave, some guys will portal out. But that's the sign of a good program. I mean, when you have really talented players leaving because of the guys that are in the room, that just shows how talented they are, and that just shows how good your team is. Keely Ringo, another guy, a lot of people ripped on him after the Ohio State game. That was me. I just thought this was a good matchup for him. I think Quentin Johnston is a lot different type of receiver than Marvin Harrison Jr. or the receiving room that LSU had that got yards on Keely Ringo. Tonight, Ringo did a job. He played like the first-round corner we all expected. Really, Quentin Johnston only had one catch, one big play, I think. Besides that, you never heard Ringo's name, which is a good thing if you're a corner. Lassiter, he was out there a lot, number 3. And then Bullard, he had 2 picks again. Back-to-back games, he was Defensive Player of the Game. So, yeah, overall, Georgia's defense, they played like 2021 Georgia defense. They were incredible. Kirby Smart, back-to-back national champions. And Stetson Bennett, on the offensive side of the ball, couldn't get stopped all night long. TCU, they really had no answer. They couldn't get any pressure. And when they did, Stetson found what to do with the ball. I know there was one play. Georgia didn't block the outside linebacker. Stetson ran up to the line, shifted the protection to the right, let a man come free. He knew he was coming free. He knew he was blitzing. Let him get in the backfield. Let him get close. Then he rolled out to the left. He did a spin move to the right, I should say. Then rolled out to the left. Got like 14 yards for a first down. And that play was really an indicament of how this game went early on. Another key play, which really put this game away in the first half, it was 24-7. Georgia went down and scored on another drive. 4 plays, I think. 31-7. TCU got the ball back with about a minute to go before the half. Now, I don't blame TCU here. You're down 31-7 to Georgia. You got to go get something, at least a field goal. Max Duggan, he ends up throwing a pick, and Georgia goes down and scores, and it was 38-7 heading into halftime. Georgia came back out after the half, and then it was 45-7. So those 2 minutes right before the half were really where this game was over. It's probably over before that, but I mean, this game was over at halftime. It really does suck to see it for TCU. Max Duggan, just an incredible season. Heisman candidate, Heisman runner-up. Really overcame every expectation, exceeded every expectation heading into this year. TCU, they were picked 7th in their own conference, 7th in the Big 12, which is just crazy to think about given that they were just in the national championship. Sonny Dykes, Coach of the Year, rightfully so. Now, this wasn't the result TCU wanted, but going forward, I think they're going to be really good. A lot of players are going to see this. They're going to say, oh, TCU's in the national championship. I want to go play for Sonny Dykes. I want to go play for that program. Heck, they're hitting the portal pretty hard right now. They just got JoJo Earl from Alabama. They got Trey Sanders from Alabama. Trey Sanders, #1 running back in 2019, not coming out of high school, 5-star running back. So I don't think TCU's going anywhere. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of guys on the team this year that are going to come back, try to get back to the playoff, try to win a Big 12 championship, because you got to remember, TCU did not win the Big 12 championship this year. Looking back on it, they had 2 losses this year, and they didn't win the Big 12, lost in the national championship. So yeah, everything next year, all their goals are going to be right in front of them. Try to get back to the Big 12 championship, try to get a victory there, and go from there. But yeah, for both programs, obviously Georgia, they're looking like the next Alabama. Kirby Smart, he's following the same blueprint as Nick Saban did. And you got to remember, Kirby Smart was in the building, defensive coordinator for Nick Saban on those national championship teams the last time a team went back-to-back. 2011, 2012, Alabama. They beat LSU in 11. They beat Notre Dame in 12. Kirby Smart was the defensive coordinator. Kirby Smart knows how to run a program. He's watched the best to ever do it every single day. He's doing it. He's doing it now in Athens, Georgia. And the Dogs are not going anywhere. They're going to be the preseason favorite next year, and rightfully so. With every player I just named for them a couple minutes ago on defense coming back, their offense is going to be loaded too. A.D. Mitchell could come back. Brock Bowers has to come back. They have Oscar Delp in that tight end room as well. Ladd McConkey, he has to come back. Just a lot of guys. A lot of guys coming back. Their defense is young. Their 2023 recruiting class, their freshmen next year, are going to be insane. I mean, I'm just thinking about that class, like guys like Samuel Mpemba, the 5-star edge rusher, Damon Wilson, 5-star edge rusher. As I already mentioned, 3 top 5 linebackers in that class. They're going nowhere. And their 2024 class, if I had to put money on it right now, it's already off to a great start. But with back-to-back championships, Kirby's going to recruit like crazy. They already have a huge recruiting weekend set up this week. I know 5-star edge rusher Colin Simmons is looking to make the trip. So put him in there. But if I had to put money on it, Georgia's going to have the #1 class in 2024, and they could pass A&M for best class of all time. They could pass Bama from this year or Bama in 2021. Sky's the limit for 2024 Georgia recruiting. Dylan Raiola, this will be the last thing I talk about before I end the video, but Dylan Raiola, 5-star #1 player in 2024, #1 quarterback. Remember, he decommitted from Ohio State. Many thought he was going to go to Nebraska. Well, he was at that national championship game. His sister plays volleyball for TCU, so he wanted to go watch the game. And he was there for Georgia because after the game, he talked about how Georgia is different, quote unquote, and they are. And just recently, Steve Wiltfong, the head director of recruiting at 247 Sports, put in a crystal ball prediction for him to go to Georgia. So that's huge news. If the best quarterback goes to Georgia with all their defensive talent for the next however many years Kirby Smart's there, if they get the #1 quarterback, looking like the next Patrick Mahomes, that's what his comparisons are. And you put the tape on, it looks just like Mahomes out there. Things could get really scary in Athens, and who knows how many championships Georgia's going to be winning in the next couple years. Like I said, sky's the limit for that program. Schedule looks fairly easy next year. 3 pretty easy out-of-conference games, like UNL Monroe, UT Martin, UAB. 3 easy wins right there. Then South Carolina early in the year. Really, their only tough game is on the road at Tennessee, right? And we saw how that game went this year. Tennessee's losing Hendon Hooker. I know Joe Milton's coming in there, but we'll just have to wait and see if Joe Milton is what Hendon Hooker was in 2022. Schedule's looking fairly good for Georgia. I expect them to go undefeated throughout the regular season next year, and I think they'll meet either Bama or LSU in the conference championship. So yeah, I think Georgia will be right back in the playoff. TCU, I hope they get back to the Big 12 championship game. They're really fun to watch this year. I like a lot of their players. And that's going to do it for the video, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.